children. Today we are going to study our lesson number 3, which is a poem, The Wonderful World by W.B. Rand. In this poem, the poet has presented his simplistic view about the world. He beautifully depicts the beauty of the world, but soon he realizes that it is the ability to think, love, and care which makes us human beings greater than the earth and not the size. The main idea of this poem is that man is the greatest thing on this earth and we should take good care of our earth. So, students, here is our poem, The Wonderful World. The Wonderful World. Great, wide, beautiful, wonderful world with the wonderful water round you curled and the wonderful grass upon your breast. World, you are beautifully dressed. The wonderful air is over me, and the wonderful wind is shaking the tree. It walks on the water and whirls the mills, and talks to itself on the tops of the hills. You friendly earth, how far do you go? With the wheat fields that nod and the rivers that flow, with cities and gardens and cliffs and isles, and people upon you for thousands of miles? Ah, you are so great, and I am so small. I tremble to think of you, world, at all, and yet when I said my prayers today, a whisper inside me seemed to say, you are more than the earth, though you are such a dot, you can love and think, and the earth cannot. W.B. Rand. Now, students, see here. Great, wide, beautiful, wonderful world with the wonderful water round you curled and the wonderful grass upon your breast. World, you are beautifully dressed. Now, in the first stanza, the poet he appreciates the beauty of the world. Okay, and because of this reason, he has used these four adjectives for world: great, wide, beautiful, and wonderful. All these adjectives are used for describing the beauty of the world. So, what he is saying that the world is very beautiful with the wonderful water. Now, what he's saying that the water is also wonderful. Without water, we can't survive. So, with the wonderful water round you curled. Okay. So, what it means that 70% of the earth's surface is covered with water. You all know, students, and the shape of the earth is round also. You all know. So, with the wonderful water round you curled, means you are having this much of water, and the wonderful grass upon your breast. World, you are beautifully dressed. Students, see here, and the wonderful grass upon your breast. Now, the poet is saying that the world is looking like a lady who is wearing a green dress. A green dress of what? These are grasslands. And she is looking very beautiful. So, world, you are beautifully dressed. Dressed means dressed only, but to rhyme with this word breast, the poet has used this word breast. So he is personifying the world as a lady. Okay. The wonderful air is over me, and the whirlwind and the wonderful wind is shaking the tree. It walks on the water and whirls the mills and talks to itself on the tops of the hills. Now, what is the meaning of whirls? Whirls means to rotate in a particular direction, to move quickly in a particular direction. So now in this stanza, the poet is describing about the wonderful air. Okay, and the wonderful air is over me. You all know, students, that the air is everywhere. Okay, and the wonderful wind is shaking the tree. How it shakes when the wind blows? Definitely, the leaves and the branches of the tree it will move. So it looks like as if the wind is shaking the tree. It walks on the water and whirls the mills. Means in the mills also the fast rotation in a particular direction, and it is because of the air only, and walks on the water. What the poet is saying, that the air it walks on the water also and talks to itself on the tops of the hills. Now, whirls the mills, what it means, that air is used in air is used in the mills to clean the grains. Okay, and talks to itself on the tops of the hills. Here again the poet is saying that the air, is saying that it is like a person who is talking to itself on the tops of the hills. It means that everywhere you will find air, and because of this reason the poet is saying that the air is wonderful. Okay, you friendly earth, how far do you go? With the wheat fields that nod and the rivers that flow, with cities and gardens and cliffs and isles, and people upon you for thousands of miles. Now, in the first line, see here, you friendly earth. The poet calls the earth friendly. And why he calls the earth friendly? Because it provides us food and water to survive, as well as it permits us to make gardens and cities on it. It also gives us cliffs and isles also. So because of all these reasons, the poet he calls the earth friendly. How far do you go? What it means, that for how much time you will be there with us, earth, with the wheat fields that nod. Nod means moving one's head slightly. What it means, that the wheat fields, the grains, they are nodding their heads. Means the air is the wind is there, and the rivers that flow, with cities and gardens and cliffs and isles and people upon you for thousands of miles. Now, the poet he raises a question on the life of the earth and its resources. Students, you all know that earth has its own limitations, and you all know about natural resources. Okay, so if the human beings they will overuse these resources, then what will happen? The earth will be an extincted planet. And because of this reason, the poet is worried about this friendly earth. And because of this reason, he is asking a question to earth, that how far do you go? Okay. Ah, you are so great. and I'm so small. I tremble to think of you, world, at all, and yet when I said my prayers today, a whisper inside me seemed to say, you are more than the earth, though you are such a dot, you can love and think, and the earth cannot. Now, in this stanza, the poet is comparing himself with that of the world, with the greatness of the world. And what he's saying that you are so great, you are so big, and I am so small. Okay, I tremble to think of you. Tremble means he's anxious. He's worried about the greatness of the world. And yet, when I said my prayers today, when he was doing his prayers, a whisper inside me seemed to say, a whisper, a low voice, it comes from inside. And what it was saying? It was saying that you are more than the earth. You are bigger than the earth. Okay? Though you are such a dot, it is also true that you are a small dot on this big, great, huge earth on in this world. But still you are bigger than the earth. And why you are bigger than the earth? You can love and think, and the earth cannot. What it means that you have the power of love and the ability to think, but the earth cannot do these things. And because of this reason, you are bigger, you are great than the earth. Okay? Great, wide, beautiful, wonderful world with the wonderful water round you curled and the the wonderful grass upon your breast, world, you are beautifully dressed. It means in these lines, the poet is describing about the beauty of the world, and he is comparing the world with that of a lady who is wearing a beautiful dress. Okay. The wonderful air is over me, and the wonderful wind is shaking the tree. It walks on the water and whirls the mills and talks to itself on the tops of the hills. Here in these lines, the poet is describing about the air, about the wonderful air, how it shakes the trees, how it is used in the mills, and how it talks to itself on the tops of the hills. You friendly earth, how far do you go? With the wheat fields that nod and the rivers that flow, with cities and gardens and cliffs and isles, and people upon you for thousands of miles. Cliffs means mountains, high rocks, and isles means island. Okay. In these lines, first the poet he calls the earth friendly as it has permitted us to live on this earth. It gives us food and water to survive, and it has given us cities and gardens, mountains and islands. So, because of this reason, the poet he calls the earth friendly. But soon he asks a question. He raises a question that how far do the earth will be there with the human beings? As the natural resources they are limited. Okay, so in these lines the poet is talking about the life of the earth, about the life of the natural resources. Okay. Ah, you are so great and I am so small. I tremble to think of you, world, at all. And yet, when I said my prayers today, a whisper inside me seemed to say, you are more than the earth, though You are such a dot. You can love and think, and the earth cannot. In these lines, the poet first he compares himself with that of the world in size, and what he's saying that he's feeling worried, he's anxious to think of the greatness of the world. But when he was doing his prayers at that time, he heard a whisper, a low sound, a low voice which is coming from inside his own body. And what it is saying that you are more than the earth, you are bigger than the earth. And it is also true that you are a small dot on this planet Earth, but still you are more than the Earth. And why you are more than the Earth? Why you are bigger than the Earth? You can love and think because you have the ability to love and think, and the Earth cannot. But the Earth, it cannot love and think like the human beings. Okay, so this is the poem. Now students, if we will see the thought process in this poem, we can see that the poem it has only two parts. Okay, in the first part, the poet he is an admirer of the world and its beauty. He says that the world is so big, so great, and beautiful. He believes that the earth is a fine, beautiful place. The poet describes this wonderful world as a person, or you can say as a lady who is wearing green dress, green clothes, that is green grass. In the second part, In the second part, the poet compares himself with that of the world. He first says that he is so small with that of the world. But when he was praying, he hears a whisper, a sound that comes inside in him, and it tells him that man is much more important than the world because man has something which the world doesn't have. The things which man possess, which man possesses is love and ability to think, but the world cannot. Okay, so this is the poem. In the first five lines, you can see that the poet emphasizes on the idea of the greatness and largeness of the world. But in the last two lines, these are the main these are the two main lines which reveal the idea, the central idea of this poem, that man is the greatest thing on this earth. So this is the contrast. Okay, what you can say that the poet he believes in the power of humanity, and he wants to say that we should take good care of this earth. So students, this is the poem. Now let's see the rhyming scheme of the poem. And the language of the poem is simple, as you all can understand it very easily. Okay, now see the rhyming scheme. World, curled, breast, dressed. World, it rhymes with curled, breast rhymes with dressed, me rhymes with tree, mills rhymes with hills. Okay, go rhymes with flow, and aisles rhymes with miles. So we can say that the rhyming scheme of this poem is A A B B C C D D. Okay. Now there are two figures of speech in this poem. But first of all, you should know about figures of speech. Till now, students, you have heard about parts of speech. Am I right? Yes, you have heard about nouns, pronouns, verb, adverb, adjective. All these are parts of speech, and they come in the category in grammar. Okay. Now, what are parts of speech? All the meaningful words, they consist parts of speech. Okay. Now, what is figure of speech? Figure of speech is a phrase or word having different meanings than its literal meanings. For example, just now I told you that in the first stanza, the poet, he has personified the world as a lady. Okay, what it means, that the world, it is an inanimate object, but here it is personified. It is behaving like a person who is wearing green dress. Okay, so this is personification. So examples of figures of speech are metaphor, simile, personification. Now in this poem also, the poet, he has used figures of speech. The first figure of speech is, you can say, alliteration. So the first example is wonderful grass upon your breast. Breast means chest. The poet, he has personified the world as a lady who is wearing a beautiful green colored dress. Okay, so this is an example of personification. Now, second, here in this line, and talks to itself on the tops of the hill. This is also an example of personification, as the poet has personified the air as a person who is talking to himself. Okay. Now, second figure of speech is alliteration. Alliteration means a repetition of sounds. Okay. Now, see here, wonderful world. Wo. The wo sound is repeating in these two words. Again here, wonderful water. Okay, wo sound. And here also you can say tremble to think. Repetition of to sound. So these are some examples of alliteration. Alliteration means a repetition of a sound. Okay. So these two figures of speech are used in this poem. Now students, these are the questions and answers related to this poem. Why does the poet say that the world is beautifully dressed? List down 4 things that the air does in this poem. So try to find out the answers of all these questions by yourself, and in your Wednesday homework, I'll give you the answer key for these questions. But meanwhile, try to find out the answers by your own. Thank you, children, for watching this video. I hope you have understood the poem very well. Have a nice day.